if you have just that sort of strange little feeling in the back of your mind that you've heard Donald Trump talk about 2 weeks before, fear not, I've got something quite reassuring for you. Your memory is not playing tricks on you. And I mentioned in the little talk up a moment ago that I just got sent a book about the July the 7th attacks on this city. It's really focused my mind. I have to read it because I'm reviewing it. So it kind of really brought home to me the human condition forgets, doesn't it? I think it has to. I think it's an evolutionary advantage to be able to forget things. I mean, trauma stays with you. It's a great line that a lot of therapists use that really stings. The body keeps the score. Trauma is a physical experience. The release of hormones when you're frightened. The body keeps the score. Trauma stays with you. But the human condition also lends itself to extraordinary acts of recovery or forgetting. I don't know if you know what happened on that day in this studio, not literally this studio, but at about 10 to 10, Nick started getting reports that there'd been some sort of power outage on the London Underground. And by about 10 past 10, and we crossed over at the usual time at 10 o'clock, it was clear that London had been the target of an unprecedented terrorist attack. The bit that I always remember, and this show was tiny at the time, this show was barely a blip upon the radar of national news coverage, but I remember someone sending me either a message describing it. I don't know that I ever saw the photograph. And it simply said, London is closed on a motorway gantry, probably the M25 would it be. London is closed, turn on your radio. And the reason I talk about the human condition having the capacity for extraordinary acts of recovery, and when I say forget, I obviously don't mean forget. I don't mean excise entirely from the personal, the individual, or the collective memory. I just mean the way it didn't change the way we live. I don't want to spoil my enjoyment of the new book, but I think the very next day we were talking about the importance of carrying on as normal. It almost sits in contrast to COVID, doesn't it? I mean, two profoundly different threats, but we embraced the end of normality with regard to COVID in almost the equal and opposite way to how we insisted on the continuation of normality then. But the reason why I mention it is simply because the environment at the time was one of shock but not surprise. We kind of knew that consequences of Western, quotes, adventures, and actually scratch adventures, military activity in the Middle East had created, whether you agree with it or not, and I don't think anyone can agree with the terror attacks, but whether you agree with this analysis of the rationale behind them or not, we lived in a country that knew, that was braced almost for what I would loosely describe as revenge attacks. You have a Labour government between 1997 and 2010 that was pretty impressive on all sorts of fronts, whether you want to look at access to tertiary education, whether you want to look at child poverty, whether you want to look at general economic health, all of those things, prior to the global economic collapse of 2008, which international history recognises. Gordon Brown and and Alistair Darling did more than almost any other figures on the world stage to lead the global powers out of that crisis. Of course, in Brexit Britain, where you get your news from the Daily Mail or their broadcasting equivalents, Gordon Brown was somehow to blame for the 2008 financial crisis, and he sold the gold. But in the real world, that was a really powerful period of British politics, both domestically and internationally. But the shadow cast by the decision to go to war in Iraq alongside George W. Bush in many ways defines the legacy of Tony Blair in the minds of many people. I think unfairly, but I think I'm probably being accurate when I say that. It defines the legacy. Interventions in Kosovo, interventions elsewhere that are judged to have been great successes, even sometimes in the face of international opposition, but they went for the hat trick, and it was a disaster by any account. So you've got that muscle memory for the Labour Party as well, the idea that a Labour government going in alongside a perhaps less than stable American administration, will bring back many, many memories of what happened as a consequence of Gulf War II, of going into Iraq alongside George W. Bush, but also, of course, of what happened afterwards. What happened afterwards could be crucial, is crucial, and can't be ignored. Why am I talking about all this? I don't really know. Well, I do know, but it's not entirely relevant to the question that I'm about to ask you. Because what I'm about to ask you is a question about Donald Trump, actually. I wanted to get that context in place because it's really important to remember that when he decides to drop his rock into the pond, whatever it is he decides to do over the course of the next 2 weeks, the ripples will reach places that we don't yet know about. The consequences of what he does is are incalculable at the moment. And I'm going to ask you quite a lazy question, by which I mean it's not one that demands a 28-minute introduction or a 3-hour monologue. It's quite a straightforward question, but I think perhaps your answers won't necessarily be super straightforward. I want to play you something vaguely funny first, if I may. I don't know if you're aware of Donald Trump saying he's going to come to a decision in the next 2 weeks. We suggested yesterday that two things determine Donald Trump's decision-making process. The first is the easiest to map. What is best for me? What is best for me? What will make me like my reflection in the mirror even more than I do already when I look at it after making this decision? And the second is the, I think, fair observation that he's never done anything that Vladimir Putin would disapprove of. From Ukraine to domestic politics, he's never done anything that Vladimir Putin would disapprove of. So he's waiting, isn't he? He's either waiting to see which direction the crowd runs in so that he can then push his way to the front of it and claim that he's leading, or he's waiting to get his instructions from the Kremlin. I know that's a little bit tinfoil hat. I'm fully conscious of that, and although I'm not going to apologise, I'm absolutely going to acknowledge it. And the other element of the conversation, of course, will be the fact that he doesn't know because it's not obvious. He makes his decisions based on who spoke to him most recently or the last voice that he heard. It's most obvious during the tariffs thing. So it's not obvious to him what is best for him to do. Shall I pardon the people that stormed the Capitol on January the 6th? Hell yeah. I mean, I can see why that's good. A, it keeps alive the lie that I actually want. B, it tells people minded to murder public officials that if they do it in my name, they'll get released from jail or they won't face any charges. C, it terrorizes and terrifies both the population and the elected politicians that represent. Easy to decide what to do in that context. Shall I introduce tariffs? Well, yeah, that's a great idea because it's going to both raise. I mean, it's just crazy, but the people are too stupid to understand it, and they'll think I'm a genius because I'm doing so. So you can usually pick the path that he will follow, and yet this time I don't think you can. So I think he's introduced this 2-week pause because he's got absolutely no idea what to do. And there is some evidence that whenever he has absolutely no idea what to do, in order to appear to the public to be in charge or to be in control, he claims that he's going to make his decision in the course of the next 2 weeks.
I would say over the next 2 or 3 weeks that will be phenomenal in terms of tax.
Wiretap covers a lot of different things. I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks.
We'll be reporting back sometime over the next 2 weeks as to NAFTA.
I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks.
What about infrastructure? When is that going to happen?
We're going to do infrastructure very quickly. We've got the plan largely completed, and we'll be filing it over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
When will you make that decision?
Over the next couple of weeks.
We're doing very well in the fight against ISIS, as General Mattis has just explained, and we're going to be having a news conference in about 2 weeks to let everybody know how well we're doing.
And the mines are starting to open up. We're having a big opening in 2 weeks.
We've had tremendous success against ISIS in our fight in the Middle East. We're doing very, very well. We're going to be having a news conference in 2 weeks on that fight.
Our Secretary of Labor is coming out with a plan in 2 weeks.
You're going to have some big news. I think we're going to have some of the big drug companies in 2 weeks.
We are coming out with that plan in 2 weeks. We are coming out with so many health care plans. And women
Unemployment recently reached the 65-year low. We think that's probably the lowest ever. But as I've been saying, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it will be. Within 2 weeks, I think you'll be historic numbers. We're signing that deal in 2 weeks. We have the dumbest immigration laws in the whole world. Watch what happens over the next couple of weeks, folks. Wait till you see what happens over the next couple of weeks. You're going to see a very secure border. We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be seeing a lot over the next couple of weeks. I like her very much. In fact, I'll be seeing her in 2 weeks. And we're going to have another big announcement in 2 weeks that'll take place over the next 2 weeks. And we're doing one other thing that, believe it or not, is even bigger, but you'll be seeing that over the next 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be today. It can be tomorrow. And it can be in 2 weeks from now. You understand? I said, do me a favor. Tell the Prime Minister that I'll call him back in 2 weeks. I'm busy. They said, 2 weeks? That's a long time. It'll be under construction very shortly, in a couple of weeks. The peak, the highest point of death rates, remember this, is likely to hit in 2 weeks. We have tests coming out, perhaps over the next 2 weeks, that will blow the whole industry away. And you'll be seeing this over the next, I think, over the next couple of weeks.
2 weeks. Some people suggesting it says he can't count any higher, but obviously that's not true. It's mildly amusing. Now listening to that in its entirety, I'm wondering about the psychology of it, what you think he's actually doing there. But that wasn't going to be my first question this morning. My first question this morning was going to be, what do you think he's going to do? Now, nobody knows. And crucially, he genuinely doesn't. He hasn't got a clue. Because he's not listening to military experts, he's not listening to his generals, he's listening to them, but he's not going to make the decision based on what the intelligence tells him, based on what the experts tell him, based on what Israel tells him, based on what the European Union allies tell him. He's not going to make the decision based on anything that is traditional, factual or evidential. He's going to make the decision based upon his narcissistic self-reward. He's going to make the decision based upon what he thinks is best for him. That's why he's given himself 2 more weeks to do it. It's not about Iran's nuclear capability. It's not about geopolitics. It's not about threats to American troops. It's what's best for me, Donald J. Trump. And he's given himself a little bit more breathing space. He may not need all of it, but that's what he's done. A proper leader, of course, would move decisively and quickly, rule out action or engage in action. But he's not a proper leader. He's a narcissistic creation. What do you think he's going to do and why? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And the why of it is really important. The why of why you think he will do what he's going to do. Shall I tell you what I think? I don't think he's going to do it. This isn't a prediction, because you can't use the skills I use to predict, for example, every single twist and turn of Brexit, or Boris Johnson's prime ministerial career, or the impact of Liz Truss's fiscal moment. You can't use skills, intelligence and knowledge to predict what Donald Trump will do next. You have to use a completely different set of criteria. I don't even know what they are. I'm almost like reading the tea leaves or trusting my gut. I don't think he'll do it. And that's why he's paused, because he doesn't want to announce yet that he's not going to. But I want to know what you think. What do you think he is going to do, and why? Hit the numbers now, you will get through, okay? And don't hold back on this. You know as much about this as I do, and your understanding of the situation is probably greater than the man that we're talking about, Donald Trump.